Welcome to Zennurgy, the interactive podcast providing resources for building a better life. I am Zennurgy. I am your conduit, your catalyst, and your coach to that better life. Thank you. A catalyst sparks change. A conduit provides a connection, and a coach draws out hidden potential. So today I am with Eddie Salaz. So say hi to the people.
Hello, people.
And he's another podcaster that I met in a podcast group. I'm not even sure which one because I'm in like 4 or 5 of them.
Same.
And we had a great discussion not too long ago where he invited me on his show. And that was the TBD podcast.
Yep, TBD podcast, to be determined.
That's what I thought it meant, to be determined.
Right.
And we had a great time on there, so I decided I wanted him to come on my podcast, and we're going to talk today about determination, which I think is a beautiful topic. If anybody's been following me, they know that I'm going through the ABCs in whatever order people pick them. And these ABCs of what I feel like are concepts that really lead to fulfillment, to joy, to direction in life, to just having the most amazing life that you can have, the most actualized life that you can have. And of course, I think determination is a big one because I don't think you can really accomplish anything without determination. So to me, it's like one of the cornerstones of success, fulfillment, and just going back to like the basis of the word, determine. I think you first, before you can have determination, you have to determine what you want. You know, you have to determine your goals. You have to determine your values, your priorities. So you have to determine some things. You have to make some choices. And then once you determine those things, then you can be determined. You can become that person that says, hey, I'm going to move forward with this. And then that's when that quality of determination, which is now a noun, a thing, actually becomes a part of your life because you've kind of moved through that process. So, you know, you said when I was on your podcast, Eddie, you said that you asked all of your guests, what does it mean to be determined? So why have you asked that question of everybody that comes on your podcast? Like, why is that a key question for you?
Well, it's kind of funny because I just started that up actually, on this most previous season. So originally what the name came about that I was trying to create a podcast and I had a co-host, and the co-host had told me that we were going to do it on this date. So I said, okay, well, this is going to be a to be determined date, a to be determined name, to be determined podcast. As far as this, you know, the actual acronym of what people consider to be determined is as something in the works, right? And when I put that in place, he kept bailing on me like my co-host did. So we pushed back our start date maybe I want to say 2 or 3 times. The third time was a final time for me. Like I said, this is the date that I'm going to start. So I had set that up. I said, I'm determined to start it on this date. And because I was determined, it threw that secondary thought of what TBD could possibly stand for. So when I started the podcast, I was like, well, I am determined to start. So maybe I'm going to be determined to start this podcast on this date. Mm-hmm. So because I started with this season with the idea of trying to support other podcasters and other entrepreneurs and other people that might want to actually discuss what they're doing, along with some other shows that I have on my network. But the point was that I am not the only one that has these goals of determination or these feelings of aspiration. Aspiration, is that the right word? I think that's the right word.
Yeah, that's the right word.
But that was a big deal for me. So when I started the podcast, I was like, well, you know, this is a solid question for a lot of people that are introspective in their overall lives. It's important for us to know, not necessarily because there's some people that will hustle and they'll grind and they'll hustle and they'll grind, but they don't have an objective or a goal. Their whole purpose is just to hustle and grind. And they'll do that until, you know, their fingers bleed or until they break their backs, and nothing ever actually comes out of it. So they're definitely determined. The individuals are determined, but it doesn't necessarily mean they have a purpose. Now, for me, what I've noticed with people that are hustlers that are trying to start businesses, or my big thing is to get people to think. If they're people that actually go out and look at their lives and look inwards, a lot of that is almost a second definition of determination, because it's determination tied with purpose. So they have to take those two together and actually create something, right? Like whatever that something might be. Like, for example, with your show and with my show, I think that's a big deal for me, is finding those people that are determined to bring out the best in what a human can be. And that's a really big, important topic to me.
Awesome. Well, you kind of did 2 in 1 there with kind of why you picked this topic and why you think this is such an important thing, determination, because I really do believe that it is huge in terms of success. And you kind of explain what it means to you, but you may want to elaborate on that more. When it comes to, I have gone through so many things about determination in terms of like the definition has changed to me, because at one point it just meant persistence. And now it has a lot more to me to do with my inner world coming out to the outer world, because I decided this past year, I made a lot of decisions. I really felt like I could control a lot of things in my life, and I wasn't doing it because I wasn't doing this. I wasn't taking control of this. I wasn't taking control of my thoughts. And so I heard this, I don't know what book it was. It was some book, and it said that we only pay attention to about 5% of what is happening around us, because we tune out everything that's not really relevant to what we're dealing with at the moment. And they were saying, if you actually train your subconscious and say, hey, here's my goal, and bring me, let me notice anything that would help me with that goal, you actually become much more aware of everything going on around you that you would have overlooked. And so today, I'm going to bring this up, determination. I've been thinking about this topic since we said we were going to do this. And then I was thinking about some of the decisions that I had made. Like one of the decisions that I had made, like maybe about 2 months ago, was I do a lot of networking. And sometimes I would go to networking events, and especially with COVID, very few people are coming out. And I would feel like, oh, man, it kind of was a waste of my time. It really wasn't beneficial. And I said to myself, if I'm only noticing 5% of what's going on, okay, subconscious, every time I go to a networking event, I want you to make it worth my while. I want you to help me tune in to whatever I might be missing. And I became determined to, every time I left my house to go network, that I would come back feeling like, oh my gosh, that was such an amazing experience. Oh my gosh, look what happened. Oh my gosh. And I set that standard, in a sense, in my head. And ever since then, it hasn't mattered how many people have been there, hasn't mattered where it's been, hasn't mattered any of that. That's been the outcome, And so today that actually happened. I went to, there was a park, beautiful park. There's water, lake woodlands. And there's all these artists, all these tents out. And so I'm going around talking about the podcast, and everybody's like, oh, that's nice. That's nice. Okay. Yeah. So they don't seem all that interested. They're wanting me to buy their paintings. That's what they're there for. So I'm thinking, okay, well, I know that there's going to be something really beautiful here. The water is here. Let me go sit by the water. Let me just let nature just relax me. And it's so beautiful. It's a great day. And I'm going to, there's this huge park now. It's people everywhere. All these benches, all these areas, like 4 different pavilions, all this stuff. So there's like thousands of spots I could be, right? And I'm walking to this one area, and this guy is fishing over there, which I find really interesting. It's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He's fishing. I was like, I thought people fished in the morning. I'm surprised to see you out here now. He's like, oh, they bite all day. And I look at him and I'm like, this guy looks familiar to me. But I'm like, well, maybe he just has one of those faces because I can't place him. And so he's just talking to me about fishing. And I have no interest in fishing, none at all. But he's just talking about fishing. And I'm like, okay, great conversation. We're talking about fishing. I know nothing about fishing.
That could be a very Zen practice, just saying.
You're right. So he's talking to me about fishing. And so I'm getting ready to leave. And I say, you know what? I should just give him a flyer anyway. Hey, I have a podcast. I was out here just to promote the podcast and talk to people. And he goes, I thought you looked familiar. I showed you your conference table. I'm like, oh my gosh. And he's like, how's your podcast going? I told him. And I'm like, how's your business going? Because he sold the conference table because he was moving from one business to another.
Oh, okay.
And he's like, we're doing $1 million in our first year. I was like, and he's like, and I'm doing workshops. And I'm like, oh, I'm doing workshops. What's your workshop about? And he goes, well, the one I just did was on change. And I said, I just had a guest cancel on me. And I said, I'm going to show you this because you're not going to believe me. The title for her podcast was Change Your Range. Now, this guy just did a workshop on change.
Right.
Okay. So I came determined to get something out of this podcast. And I'm sorry, to get something out of this networking venture. And this is the man who can take that spot that just got,
I know, very synchronistic.
Out of all the people in this park, I happened to walk right up to this guy who sold me my conference table and just did a workshop on change. And then I say, you know what? I'm doing workshops too. He's like, well, what's your workshop on? And I happen to always have my little backpack with me, and I pull out my workbook, and I tell him about it. He buys 2 on the spot and 2 sets of bookmarks. So determination. I'm bringing that up because there could be people out in the audience who listen to this later. And I feel that we people, that whole inner thing, it creates so much outside of us. So because I had made a determination in my past that every time I went out, it was going to be beneficial for me and for the people that I interacted with, I walked up to the right person who could take a spot that got, where I got stood up, right? And I can do workshops with this guy. And I just made 4 sales as he was fishing. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, when we talk about determination, I think it is a big topic because I think it starts mental and then it goes from there. And I think thoughts create things. I say that all the time. Thoughts create things. And when people say, well, what do you mean by that? Okay, I just showed you what I mean by that.
Right.
My thought, and every time I go out, it's going to be beneficial for me and people I interact with, created my beeline to this person that I wasn't even really intending on really talking to that much. I mean, I was just going to say, hi, how you doing? Nice fishing, I hope, but there was something else going on, you know what I'm saying? All of that. So
yeah, you didn't even know that was somebody that was going to be in that realm of focus.
Right.
And I think you're not alone in that. I think a lot of people, when they become, and maybe that's a downfall of determination, is that they think that they become driven to a pigeonhole view of what they want to do or what they want to happen to them, that they kind of shun everything else that doesn't fit into that perspective. But if we're open to what the world is trying to deliver to us, the universe is trying to deliver to us, that we can receive those, those little bits of tidbits like your fisherman that you had nothing in common with, you know, like he happened to be that synchronicitous point of that day that actually connected everything together for you. You know, I love those kind of stories. They're great.
Yeah, they are great. It validates for me everything that I say to people and everything that I believe. It just brings it into such clear focus that this is the way the world works. Even though we weren't trained that this is the way the world works this way.
Sadly, right? Like this is, and I know you're a teacher, so I'm not, by no means am I knocking the whole teacher thing. But like I always think about that, like when I was a kid, like if I would have been, and not that I would have paid attention to those kind of lessons, but like any type of like philosophical questioning, real history, you know, versus the tidbits that we learn, things that would have like driven. And it's funny, like as I got older, I thought about this one teacher that I absolutely despised in middle school. I just hated this guy, but he taught me so much that actually somehow was festering in my subconscious that made me question the things that I see in our overall, in our government, our society, stuff like that. And it was really strange to think about it, like, because I was like, man, where did I learn this from? Oh, that teacher I hated in middle school. Like, that's where I learned this from. It was so strange to me that this guy, you know, was able to bring this to the forefront for me at that age. I just wasn't able to actually receive the gift until I turned 40. You know, it just took me a while to get there.
It is interesting about what we don't realize we're taking in, and then we realize later how much impact it had on us. So, you know, one of the questions that I put in the description of this show is what do you feel are the foundations of determination? Like, where does it come from? Do you think people are like born determined, or do you think that they are taught determination, or do you think they learn it on their own, or do you think it's all three of those?
That's a weird one, because that goes into the whole philosophical debate of nature versus nurture. Mm-hmm. I thought about that one a lot. Out of your whole list of questioning, that was the one that really kind of stumped me. Like, I was like, I don't know. Like, that's a weird one, because the only way I would be able to answer that and feel like that's a solidified scientific, empirical answer would be if there were two of me that existed at the exact same time, and we were able to go different routes and decide whether or not determination played a role in our genetic foundation or whatever. Like, that one's a tough one for me. Because so like the way that I thought about it, the way I stand is I've always been, like, I always tell people that I am a lover of misfits. Like, I have always been the type of person that attracted the outwardly, the people that didn't really fit into the societal norms. I was able to intermingle between different groups in high school. I was able to intermingle in groups and you know, and I always tell people that, like, I told my daughter, she's going to be going into high school next year. And I go, you know, sadly, cliques and groups and stuff, that doesn't go away when you get to your jobs. You would think it would go away because adults should be adults, but no, they still have cliques and groups. And sadly, you see that in even our government, like, I don't know if you're familiar with Tulsi Gabbard, but she was on the Democratic ticket. I absolutely love that chick. She's amazing. But she was talking about when she was a Congress member that she tried to high five a Republican because she's a Democrat, and she high-fived a Republican, and she actually got shunned from other Republican or Democratic members because she was trying to show some kind of kinship amongst the other people that were, you know, in the office. Like, they have cliques. And this is our political parties, you know, our political affiliates, our supposed quote unquote leaders that have these same ideologies of cliques. So back to your point with determination. The scary part about that is, I think for me, when I decided to focus, it was because I was in a spot in my life where I felt purpose didn't no longer exist. I felt that I was perpetuating a stereotypical blue collar life, and that I was becoming depressed, I was becoming anxious. All the dreams that I felt I had, quote unquote American dream, all of those things that I felt that I had were slowly kind of going away in the way of me paying my time to this world, hoping to get a beneficial paycheck so that I could go out and pay bills. Like, that's what I felt that I like. Those were, it's like, I didn't feel my purpose existed. And then I was like, you know what though? One of the things that I enjoy learning, and I enjoy conversation. And I felt that looking at a lot of historical, philosophical debates, and it's kind of funny because I'm pretty big into politics as well. So getting tied, you look at like a lot of Stoics, they were tied into philosophy in ancient Greece and stuff like that. But that's where I realized that my purpose was being able to have a conversation with different groups and allowing them to maybe converse with one another, whereas they might not have ever talked to one another before. You know, when I was in high school, I used to associate myself, like I had family members that were Bloods, and then my friends were Crips, and then I had friends that were in skater gangs, and, you know, you had the stoner crew, and I could get those guys to have conversations with one another on a human level and realize that there's more that we have in common that we might not necessarily not have in common. So for me, I realized that my determination as a human was more important than my determination as a entrepreneur, I guess. And that's one of those weird evolving things that you talked about, that it changes for me. Like, determination is such a weird, even though I use it as my focus point on my podcast. I was thinking about it. Your line of questioning is amazing because it really made me think introspectively on how, you know, even though I think about it that way, there's so many different facets that I can try to attract that require, like, determination falls into like a scale of motivation, but you need to have purpose to even have determination. Yeah. Like, there's so many lines that necessarily have to fit. You could have the most drive of anybody, but if you don't know where you're going, you know, it's like a train running off the tracks, you know.
I agree with you. And as I started doing this podcast, you know, I found myself, I'm on one topic, we're on determination. And then I found myself saying in the podcast, okay, we're talking about determination right now, but the episode from the past you really need to watch is Busy or Building, because that one was about, are you just a hamster spinning your wheels, or are you actually moving towards your goals and building the life that you want? You know, that ties in exactly to what you were saying about the hustle, people who hustle, but they're not really getting anywhere. That's the hamster on the wheel, you know? So the thing about life, and I try to teach my students this, you know, I'm an English teacher, and there were students who would be in my class and they would be a little upset with me because they said I taught too much history. And I said, well, you can't understand the piece that we're reading unless you understand what created it. And what created it is the history that led up to it. So if all we do is read it, you're going to have a very superficial understanding of it because you don't understand it was created in a context. And so we have to, and the one thing that I don't like about America in terms of, I think other nations value history a lot more than America does in general. People think, well, that's the past, I don't need to worry about it. But the past, we still are human beings, and we still recreate the past if we don't learn from it.
Absolutely.
And so that's the power of history, is you can look at what happened in the past and say, oop, I see the signs. Let me stop before we end up here where we don't, you know. And like I told my students, we're living through a second civil rights movement. We're living through things that should have been fixed, but weren't. They've built up again to the eruption point. And that's why we had George Floyd and the protests and all that stuff. So there's individual determination, And then there's societal determination, group determination. I've seen with COVID so much group determination on so many topics, whether it's dealing with the homeless and COVID, dealing with Black Lives Matter and human rights issues, the LGBT community. Massive. I mean, you want to see some determination? You look at some of those groups. I mean, inspiring. Biggest protest movements that we've ever had in the world have happened in the last year. So you see that groundswell and the power of the people coming to the forefront. And then you see the individuals that are coming out. To me, there's a renaissance of art. If people are not noticing that there's all these books coming out, there's these paintings coming out, all of these biopic movies of these characters that were overlooked. We had Billie Holiday come out. We had, Judas and the Black Messiah. I mean, it's just overwhelming. It's wonderful. It's great. I see a determination to tell stories that have been overlooked, to right wrongs that have been done. So I feel like, in a sense, we're living in the age of determination. We're living in the age where people are saying enough is enough. And if nobody else is going to do it, I'm going to do it. So I'm going to be the one to start this movement. And even kids. I mean, there's so many kidpreneurs right now, that are doing all kinds of social activism. And creating businesses and things like that. So I think it's a very inspiring time to live, and in a very tumultuous time to live. The best of times, like what Charles Dickens says, what is the best of times and the worst of times?
Worst of times, yeah. That's funny, because like I've actually heard that I can't remember where, but they were saying that usually in the most tumultuous times in history, that's where the best art comes from.
Oh yeah.
And I was thinking about that when you said that, because I'm like I said, I'm pretty politically active. My personal stance is I'm a libertarian, which means limited government, more personal responsibility. But living in the American society and the American culture, we're not. I feel like a lot of Americans really aren't up to par with their own personal responsibility. You see that with the silliness of the mask debates and the coronavirus and all that kind of stuff. And I get it. Like, that's just the way of times. In Stoicism, it talks about the ability to focus on the things you can control, which is your soul, yourself. So you can focus on what you can do, and everything outwardly of your soul or yourself is ordained by God or the universe, or, whatever you want to look at. And I think humans are so fickle. Like, we don't, like, you see it in almost any culture. We live within that cultural dynamic, that we only focus on that cultural dynamic. We don't think that things could possibly be better, but I think right now, we're seeing a big change in policy. And I think it's why people are so uneasy and uncomfortable, is because there is a big change. Not that I believe our current sitting president is that big change. But I think the people are the big change. I think that we're paying attention more. We're noticing more that what these politicians are doing. It's not just, my mom's a Democrat, my dad's a Republican, whatever the case might be. I think we're actually paying attention, and that the culture is shifting into a blue collar, the people class. And that's where a lot of this momentum's coming from, which it cracks me up, because I have so many friends, like where I live, it's very rural. So it's very conservative here. And a lot of those guys, they talk about, overreaching government. And to me, overreaching government is the same thing as, police brutality. It's the same thing. Like, to me, that's the same thing. So you can't claim that the government is overreaching and then not recognize that BLM may have some valid points in what they're trying to protest against. And then on the same token, it's like, and I saw, I think it was CNN reported on the Ammon Bundy. Are you familiar with that case at all?
No. What?
So it started in 2016. Mm-hmm. And what it was grazing rights in Nevada, I want to say Nevada, Utah area. And the federal government had come in and basically was going to arrest the cattle ranchers in those areas. And they literally had an armed standoff. These guys came in and the ranchers in the area armed up with their guns and everything, and they fended off the federal government from coming in to arrest these cattle ranchers. See, and it's so crazy to me that it's like, okay, that's government. There was government overreach. These guys are providing food to the nation. There's nuance and discussion to be had. Absolutely, 100%. But to me, it's like BLM and those guys, even though they do have an intersection point. Like, there's a government problem that the general populace recognizes, that we don't want to agree with one side or the other, because we've managed to divide ourselves so hard that we can't possibly find sympathy or compassion for the other side, you know. And that's why that was another reason why I started this podcast, actually, was because I wanted to bring nuance to the forefront and try to explain that people are doing the things they do because they feel the way that they feel. They're determined to show you how they feel. And if it's got to be through force, it's going to be through force because you've given them no alternative. And I think that's an important thing to recognize with where we are. I saw something the other day that was talking about us being in a second Gilded Age from the 1890s. Yeah. So they were saying that, you know, our political division and, you know, how you can tell a person based on how they tell you what they believe in, what political party they belong to. And that shouldn't be that way. You know, that's not supposed to be that way. So I think it's kind of crazy.
Well, that's interesting. If people don't know what the Gilded Age is, basically it was a time when the have-nots and the haves were there was such a huge divide, and the haves really felt entitled to have everything, and didn't care that the have-nots had nothing. And there was so much corruption, and it was just rampant. And out of that time, we had a lot of movements come to try to help the little guy, you know, and to protect the little guy, because people, in a sense, were so disgusted by, I guess, the brazenness and the lack of sympathy, the lack of fairness in the society. And so it is interesting that you bring up that comparison, you know. And my next question on the list was, is determination generational? You know, because we're talking about this generation and how they're rising up. And we see a lot of young people, you know. I know with the protests, there was a lot of young people. And I remember looking back, I can look back in my family, you know, my grandparents were very active. My grandmother and father, they used to sit on the porch with a shotgun because they were protecting the Freedom Riders when they would sleep, because the KKK was likely to come out and try to burn.
I remember reading about that. Yeah, I read about that.
Or they were likely to come if everybody was sleeping and nobody was watching. They were likely to try to snatch somebody up in the middle of the night and lynch them. So they were much less likely to do that if you had a shotgun pointed at them. You know, so that was my grandparents and my aunts and uncles, you know, my parents, my uncles in the Supreme Court case, Garner versus Louisiana, that desegregated the lunch counters. So that was argued by Thurgood Marshall, you know. And so my family has been in activist circles for generations, you know, and that I was raised that way. And at LSU, when they had what they call the massacre there, you know, when there was protests against the Vietnam War, my aunt was on campus. You know what I'm saying? She was shot at, you know, so they have been protesting, you know, my whole life. I went to my first protest as a teenager. So for me, all of this is like, this is something I've been involved in, but for a lot of people, they've never seen some of the things that have happened. And this generation has gotten really involved. And some people felt like before they were kind of, I guess, spoiled and disengaged and entitled. You know, what do you think? Do you think that there is any kind of differentiation between the generations on determination, or do you think it's individual? It's not really generational?
I feel you're loading me up with a question is what I feel like you're doing right there.
There is no right or wrong answer. This is so whatever you say is no, I don't believe in right or wrong answers on pretty much all the questions that I put. I like to hear what people think.
Perspective. Yeah, I love that too. Yeah. So, okay. So one of my favorite quotes about history is that man rises through history in silken slippers rises through history in silken slippers and falls through history in wooden shoes. So I've always, when that was, I've heard that first from Dan Carlin. If you ever get a chance to listen to his podcast, amazing history podcast. But I mean, that synopsis says that we come up through history through privilege, and then things take a crap, and then we descend, you know, through whatever downfall it is that we descend through society wise. As far as determination comes between, I think it's difficult to say individual or generational, because we have to recognize wrongs to be able to stand against them. And some people get so comfortable in their complacency that they forget that these wrongs are even being committed. So I watched Life of Pi. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
Okay. My biggest thing about that movie is the island. So when he goes to the carnivorous island and he visits that island, he's happy there. He gets food, he gets sustenance, he gets water, he's comfortable. He could die there. He's okay with just being there for as long as he could possibly be. Everything he needs is at that island, but his problems didn't go away. He's getting everything that he needs to survive, but his problems aren't gone. And I think about that so much on a personal level, because I'm like, where do you stop? Like, you don't stop until you win, right? So this is one of those things where it's like, you see the problems, but because, you know, you got an okay life and your bills are paid, do you just let it go, or do you try to make things better? And I think that's where a lot of people forget on the protest side why we have our rights in America, why America is so special, is that we can go out and we can tell the government head on, this is what we think is wrong. And it shouldn't be one of those things where it's like, where people are coming up to you and saying, well, why are you complaining about this? Well, if there's enough people to create a protest that can block off highways and block off, you know, city byways and tell you that something's wrong, maybe you should try to listen to what they have to say. Like, there's something functionality wrong with the government. And this is why I believe personally Trump got elected, is because people on that side saw that there's a problem with the government and elected, whether or not you agreed with him or not. But that's why he got put into government, is because people saw the government as not working for them anymore. It wasn't something that portrayed their interests. They saw this guy come out from left field that had nothing to do with politics, but had a bunch of money, but he was telling you that he was going to drain the swamp and he was going to end corruption and all this kind of stuff. That's arguable there. I don't think he did, but you know, we're not here to talk about that guy. But you know, the point of it is that he got elected because the people in this country felt that the government itself was disenfranchising them from their rights and abilities as Americans in this country. So where we're at now, we'll see what kind of stems from that. You know, I always, as an American citizen, the way I look at it is I don't want our president to do bad. I want him to be as good for the people as possible. I hope, what my hope is for this next 4 years is people have the same determination with and vigor as they did against the government as they did while Trump was in office, so that they can see that the work's not done just because that guy got out of office. There's a lot of work that needs to be done still. And until we completely take everything back as the people of America, I don't think that, and you might see generational determination from the kids, but I think I often tend to fall back on like my family and the adults in my family that I remember. They never approached government as a responsibility. You know, like I don't remember them ever talking about voting. I don't remember them ever talking about getting involved in local politics, nothing like that. But I think with the way that I see a lot of kids now, whether or not, you know, it's some weird indoctrination, you know, you might see it on the conservative or liberal side, but at least they're kind of getting them geared into a point where they're like, oh, we need to pay attention to this. We need to recognize and see that if we want to be determined as a society, if we want to progress as a society, what are our next steps? Who do we look at? Who do we, you know, who are we voting for? Are they representative of our true intentions in this country?
Yeah, I agree with you on that. You know, I think that there are so many different backgrounds. My family is probably different from a lot of Black families in terms of they are politically active and have been politically active. And there are a lot of Black people that are in communities where there's a very low voter turnout. But because my family was involved in things like voter registration drives, that was not an option. As soon as I was able to vote, it was like my parents were like, you voted, right? You did vote, right?
I do that with my kids.
You didn't vote. Get your behind up and go vote now. Look, girl, you got time to get to the polls. You know what I'm saying? So it was like, for me, going to college was not an option. Voting was not an option. There were certain things that were not options. It was just, you're going to live in my house, you're going to do certain things. You know, if you're going to live in my house, you have to have certain grades. If you're going to live in my house, as soon as you turn 18, you vote. You're going to live in my house, you know, so it was just not even an option. So there were certain things that I don't think I ever even, how can I put it, considered, you know, it was just not even a choice, you know? So it was like in a sense, a betrayal of everything, that all of the sacrifices and the people that put their lives on the line. Right. So that's one perspective. And then there's a totally different perspective of, oh, your vote don't matter. No. They already picked the person way a long time ago, and money buys everything. And it's all the lobbyists and whatever, all of that. And that may have a lot to do with presidential elections and not so much to do with local elections. Absolutely. But, you know, so I think that determination, I think that some of it is generational because some of it is instilled in you. You know, I remember, and I've said this on a different podcast. I have two sons, 25 years old. And when they left high school, they had some difficulties adjusting to adult life. And I remembered looking at them and seeing kind of the light drain from their eyes, and they were doubting themselves and doubting their ability to be successful. And it was a difficult time. And I remember almost channeling Langston Hughes, you know, don't you sit down on them steps now. God knows it's kind of hard, you know, but I still climbing, baby. And life ain't been no crystal stair, you know. And it was almost like that. You had to I talk about at the beginning of my podcast, me and a coach drawing out that hidden potential. You know, I almost had to say to them, look, you know, you come from people who overcame. And yes, life is hard. Yes, you get doors slammed in your face. Yes, you may have to work twice as hard. Yes, they look at you and come up with a whole list of whatever they think that are stereotypes. Yes, yes, yes. And so what? So what? You can't change any of that. All you can do is keep moving forward. You know, and I think about that Rocky. There's a clip from Rocky. I think it's Rocky 3 or Rocky 4, you know, when his son is embarrassed that his dad is going to go back and fight at like 50 or some crazy number. And he's like, Dad, I'm just getting my start. People are just starting to take me seriously. And if you go back and fight, they're going to be laughing at me. And Rocky says, when you were a child, you were so small, I could hold you in my hand. I don't know what happened to you. Because when life hits you, you get up. You don't sit there and blame your being on the ground against life being hard. You know, you get up. It doesn't matter how hard you get hit. It matters how many times you can get hit. And Rocky says, keep moving forward. How many times can you get hit and keep moving forward? That's what winning is made from, you know? That's what winners do. And it's a great clip because he does not for a second let that kid feel sorry for himself and feel like, you know, he's able to make this excuse for why, oh, it's hard. It's hard for you, baby. I'm so sorry. Let mama hold you. I'm going to just take care of it. No, Rocky's like, no, life is about you getting hit and you keeping the forward motion going. You know, you get hit, you keep moving forward. You get hit, you keep moving forward. And I think it's a very powerful message of determination, you know? And so I do think that sometimes the older generation has to be that tough love for the younger generation and has to say to them, baby, I done been there. Get up. You know what I'm saying? Like my dad told me one time, put your big girl panties on and get up, girl. You know, and not to give them that excuse or that, how can I put it? That permission to wallow in it. No, you
right.
Gotta get up. You got to get up and you got to keep moving forward. You know,
that's one of my favorite King quotes is, if you can't fly, you walk. If you can't walk, you crawl.
Yeah.
But whatever you do, you keep moving forward. And that's that's such a big deal to, I think, and not to downplay anybody's trials and tribulations through adversity, because I know, you know, I'm a Hispanic male. I look Arabic. Like 9/11 was the worst time to look the way I looked when that happened. I was a cable installer, and I never experienced so much hatred for an outward appearance than I've ever had in my entire life. Like, you know, and I have black aunts. I have, you know, a lot of black family members, a lot of mixed family in my blood. So it's the struggle that they've had to go through. I see it from their perspective. I see what they have to deal with. And you can't downplay that they do struggle with stupid things like a friend of mine, he's a real estate agent. He's a black real estate agent. He has a friend that's a mixed, one of his coworkers is a mixed real estate agent, and he talks very professional. And when he talks to people, people call him and they'll tell him on the phone that they don't want to live next to black people, you know, and he's, you know, he's a half black, you know, American human. I hate using, you know, breaking it down like that, but he's a human. And they tell him they don't want to live next to black people. And he's got to downplay it because that's his job. His job is to sell houses to these people. And it's like, you know, and he's talking about the difficulty of dealing with that kind of stuff. But him and my friend that's in real estate, they never stop that forward momentum. You know, they drive past the hatred. They drive past the discriminations. yeah, like you said, it comes to them, and it sucks because it does seem like it's a little bit disproportional at times, and I completely understand that. But you have to put that foot and plant it, and just, like one of the quotes I'm thinking of right now, it talks about, what do you do when the weight of the world falls on your shoulders? You stand and brace, like you brace yourself. That's all you can do. Like as a human being on this planet, the only thing you have control over is your own will, your own determination, and your own drive to try to progress to the next phase, whether it's through, hatred or through despair or whatever. And it sucks because I get it, because there's so much that makes people want to just quit. But if at any point, if you can just understand that this too shall pass, you can move to that next step. It's crazy. Humans are a crazy because we're so different than the rest of this world that we don't operate on the same scale as everything else that exists on this planet. We can take a problem and look at it and be like, these are the rules, but screw the rules. I'm going to do it this way. Like, I don't want to do it by the rules. I want to go this way, and I think that when we recognize that we don't have to play by those cultural dynamics, because that's the way we came up, that whole nature versus nurture argument. If that's your nurture, like you grew up in the ghetto, you grew up in the hood, you don't have to play by those rules and have to stay in that same game. You can bust yourself out and try to do something different. You can try to be better. You can try to, I love the human potential. I think it's an amazing thing for sure.
Well, you saying this too shall pass. Okay. So the next question was like, does it require religion? And in the Bible, it says, and it came to pass. I remember I was sitting in church. This is when I used to go to church like 4 years ago. And the pastor said, the Bible says it never came to stay. The Bible never says in there, and it came to stay. It always came to pass. So everything is transitional. You have to always realize, you're on your way to something. You're on your way through something. It's not, you're not here just to stay in this one spot. And so when it comes to determination and religion, religion is an interesting term, because I learned that
I was going to ask you about this, so I'm glad you're going to talk about it, because I was going to ask you about this.
I learned that the word religion, we started off talking about determination. The base word is determine. The root of the word religion is lig, which is lig, which actually means to tie or to bind. And that's where we get our word ligature from. Like when somebody strangles a person, they use ligature. Religion, strangulation, and the prefix re means again or repetitively. And then ion is a suffix that means the act of. So the word religion actually means to repetitively bind someone through a process, through an actual systematic system to bind them. Okay, so, when I learned that years ago, I was like, that's why I had such a big problem. I'm a free spirit. I have a lot of questions. I like to learn. I don't like to be boxed in. That's why I have such a big problem with religion, because it's literally, that's the whole purpose of it, is to bind you, to
Correct.
Literally tie you, to literally stuff you into a box of beliefs and say, this is it. There is nothing else. Believe this, and we're going to keep you going back every Wednesday, every Sunday, every Friday, whenever the women's meeting is, whenever the men's meeting is, whenever the youth meeting is, to keep binding you again and again to these beliefs and these thought processes. And I remember when I was reading The Miseducation of the Negro. And there's a quote in there that was so powerful. And he said, if you teach a man or a woman, child, whoever, that he or she is inferior, you don't have to make a back door. They will make one for themselves and walk right through it. So when it comes to determination, I think that religion is a double-edged sword. I think that it gives a lot of people faith that things will get better, that they're here for a purpose, that God is on their side. But then I think it also gives a lot of people that, well, it must be God's will. So maybe I shouldn't really try, and maybe, suffering, Jesus suffered. So I guess I'm just supposed to put up with this. So I think that depending on what you take from it, it makes some people complacent, and some people, a lot of people who came against Martin Luther King Jr. basically said he wasn't Christian. I mean, the whole letter from Birmingham jail starts off with him being called evil, and he's not a Christian because he's standing up against segregation laws. And then he has to go through the whole argument of Jesus and Socrates and Copernicus and all these people, Martin Luther, stood up against laws that they felt were wrong, because there's a higher law, the law of God, that says we are all created in God's image and nobody should be put down or, discriminated against or abused, the golden rule kind of thing. So for me, I think religion and determination, it can go either way. It could be a help, and it could be a big hindrance, depending on what your religious beliefs are, Yeah,
that's true. I think I did an episode called Spiritual Love and Window Cleaning. My little brother, he was on the episode. He owns a window cleaning business out of Denver, and he's a huge, he has a strong belief in the Christian faith. And we actually discussed a little bit of that, because I think he's one of those people that, because of him, I found a little bit more nuance in the belief of a religion. He doesn't say religion, he says relationship. A lot of people say relationship. It's not a religion, it's a relationship. But yes, I agree 100% with the dogmatic views when somebody tells you that you have to believe a certain thing because this is exactly how it's supposed to be portrayed. It's like, well, I get that, but you understand that because you believe those views is only because you were born in this side of the world. If you go to another side of the world, you would have got an entirely different book of views that would have told you the exact same things to believe, and it wouldn't be this God or this Jesus that they're telling you to believe in. So the way I utilize a lot of theoretical texts is usually just for information. A lot of it's historical documentation. I think there is a lot of value that can be found in those books. Yeah. As far as I think determination goes within religious texts, unless it's a determination of faith, unless you believe that, no matter what happens, God has your back, I think that's the only level of determination you really get. Because I don't think when it comes to, I can't remember the whole meme logic. People can say what they want about memes, but they do a really good job about embedding information in your head.
I agree.
But one of the memes that I saw was it said that the universe does not take kindly to demands, or what is it? The universe does not bow to demands, and so it doesn't take kindly to demands. So if you believe that things should go your way, the universe is going to fight you and give you something entirely different than what your intentions were. I probably have that quote wrong, but the idea is that, just because you want something to happen doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you still can't make it happen. It might mean your struggle might be harder. It might mean that I was talking to my co-host on my Today's Stoic episode our show, he was saying that, you know, he was talking about if he ever wanted to become a basketball player, you know, I think he's like 5'6" or something like that, and he's not good at basketball at all. And he was saying that if you wanted to become a basketball player, you know, that's not realistic. And I said, well, it's still your choice. Now, it might not be easy, but if you really, really wanted it, you could do it. Now, whether or not you would be getting to the NBA or how much effort it's going to require you to get into the NBA, that's a whole different story. But you can still drive for it. You can still wake up every morning. You can do nothing but dedicate yourself to the sport. You can do everything that it takes for you to get into that position. Now, is it going to be easier for somebody who's, you know, 6'7" and, you know, has a 23-inch arm jump and, you know, a 17-inch wingspan? He's probably going to be better off because, you know, that's just what, you know, the whole dynamic, the physical dynamics of being able to play a good game of ball is going to be. You can be who you are, you know, be short, dumpy, and not be able to jump to save your life. Can you do it? Maybe, but it's going to be a hell of a lot more work for you. But it doesn't mean that you have to change your dynamics just to fit what it is. Realistically, yes, you need to go back in and recalculate, you know, what are my chances of being able to pull this off and how much effort do I need to put in? And then maybe see if you have alternative choices. But it doesn't mean that at any point that you should just give up. You know, those are your choices. Those are your stances to do what you feel you're determined to do. If you can go out and create something, obviously logic will play a role, you know, where you might fall into place, but you need to assess, you know, what are your potentials for this? Can you pull it off? Is it going to be a lot harder for you? And if it is going to be a lot harder for you, don't strain yourself about it. You know, recognize it. Say, hey, yeah, this is actually going to be really difficult for my life, but I'm going to still pursue it because this is what I want to do. All right. That's all you. Go for it.
Great. You know, when I was creating the Facebook event for this, I had put 11 questions on here, and I think we've gotten through number 4. Yeah. But, yeah. So, you know, we're going to kind of stop there. I wanted to do a piece of poetry, and I definitely wanted you to tell the people where they can find you. But audience who's tuning into the podcast, those questions are not going away. Because see, what I do believe is that it's great to really mine your own subconscious and your own beliefs and to get to know yourself. You know, I created my Zennurgy Your Life package. And one of the things that people say as they work through it is, I'm getting to know me a lot better. I have never asked myself these questions before. And now that I've really sat down and had to journal about this, I am getting clarity on what is important to me, what I really believe, you know, how I can really align myself up with what I believe. And, you know, I heard this YouTube video, and this guy was asking this personal development coach. He says, man, he's like, my business is taking off, but my personal life is crap. And the personal development coach said, well, if we go with Malcolm Gladwell's theory, when you're successful in something, it means you put about 10,000 hours into it. You became an expert in that. So let's say you put 10,000 hours into your business and you know that business inside and out. You know every piece of equipment, you know the best strategies to sell, you know every book that's been published, you know, on that, whatever you're doing, you know it like the back of your hand. But how much time have you invested in yourself? How much time have you invested in actually thinking about, you know, what you want to do outside of your business, like in your personal life, like your standards for yourself? How much time do you spend? And the guy was like, I never even thought about putting any time into myself, investing. And he was like, oh, well, what do you expect if you don't invest in yourself? If you don't, in a sense, get to know yourself, explore yourself, think about really what makes you tick, get to know yourself, then yeah, your personal life is not gonna be where you want it to be, because you're reacting rather than making choices, rather than already having a lot of things outlined and knowing what your values are. You're just reacting, And so I thought that was a really powerful conversation. We get the results we get because of the investment we make, and to decide, hey, I have this life, I have this brain, I have this heart, I have this, I have all of this me. What am I actually doing to invest in me and really shape my thought process, shape the way I deal with conflict, shape the way I deal with people, shape my heart and my attitudes and all that. And if you're not using my product, use somebody's, go through something where you're investing in yourself on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Because to me, that's the only way that we actually create a life that works and a life that's fulfilling. Like you said, you could be hustling till you bleed from your fingers, but then feel like you have accomplished nothing. And I think that that's what the Bible was talking about when he says, what does it gain? I mean, what good does it do a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? You know what I mean? So I'm gonna read you guys this piece of poetry that I wrote this morning, and then we're gonna listen to Eddie Salaz tell us how we can find his podcast and how you guys can follow him. So I was thinking about the concept of determination and just everything that had happened. Oh my gosh, so many things have happened recently. Everything. So this is what I wrote. The end all and be all. Want to let my thoughts drift just a little, emotions crest, shift, and just settle. Life, turbulent but unforgettable, has definitely been my lot. Want to breathe deep, stretch, massage my bones. Oil, lotion, fingers, touch alone is sensual. Needed is a home that grounds me to my cornerstones. Want to dance to music, light a wick, stare in space for just a bit, journal, question, and reflect till all is calm in me. 2021 has been a beast. New challenges bring new release. Family, environment, health, increase. Weather and stress, a search for peace. Darkness, then light, now harvest season. All the past erupts, no reason. Seeds sown years ago have spread, blossom, festoon. Don't fear to tread. The jungle looms vibrant and red, but I machete hold. Fearless I be, secure you see. I know the who that you call me. I know the what I choose to be. I know the why that's driving me. Then when and how, that's not my job. My pulse, I listen, hear it throb. I move synchronous on top. Nothing will subjugate. Want to let my thoughts swirl in the ether, breathe in, join with other seekers. My body, just a travel keeper, storing all within. Life is, it's true, is many-hued, is multitudes, unfolding interludes, like music rich, like flavor strong, like sex, a rapture hours long, like nature, a peacock, feathers shown. Love is, it's true, is pain and lift, is growth and death, allegiance shifts. 2021 has been a beast, but I choose life, love, and peace. I choose full expression, release. I am, this is, that's all. So, thank you.
That's good.
Thank you. Yeah, so a lot was going on in there. Just the who, what, when, where, why, and how. The weather that we had, the crazy weather.
Oh, I know. Jesus.
Everything. I mean, I was just I'm thinking about all of these things that are happening. Everything. It's just life is love.
It is.
you know, you have all of these things to deal with, and you have to just deal with the jungle, knock it down with your machete. You know what I'm saying? Cut
Yeah.
your way through and keep going, keep moving forward. So, you know, it definitely was about determination, you know, and about, even though life is a beast, you just keep moving forward. So, so tell the people where they can find you, and the names of your podcast and everything.
So you can find us on Facebook as the TBD Network, but the easiest way to probably find our podcast is at anchor.fm/TBD podcast. And they have all the social media links that you can click on there. We're on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. There's 2 podcasts on the TBD Network right now. One is called TBD It's a Podcast Thing, where I had the wonderful Zennurgy on there. And then the other one is called Today's Stoics. Basically, those are, I try to keep them around 30-minute episodes of just Stoicism, the philosophy of Stoicism, and how it portrays our current society and how it can help our current society. A lot of it has to do with, it's kind of funny, like I'm more of a Buddhist. My co-host is more of a Stoic. And it's kind of cool because the two philosophies kind of intersect a little bit, so we can discuss the historicity of it. And I enjoy talking with that guy quite a bit. His name is Eric Martinez. He has also his own podcast called SADM. It's the severe, I always mess this up, severe auditory, or no, excuse me, SDAM, severely deficient auditory memorization. Yeah, that's so basically it's a neurological function where his brain doesn't think like most people. It's not a deficient, like a disease or anything. It's just the way these people think. And his podcast is crazy because he talks to other people that talk about how they don't see images in their head and how they don't hear things when they think. It's just weird, like a thought. There's no, and I never really thought about how I think until I talked to this guy. So I was like, he's like, do you see pictures when you think? I don't know. I don't think about if I see pictures when I think. I just think, like it's not. So it was fun. But anchor.fm/TBD podcast is my easiest way to get a hold of me.
Awesome. And I am Zennurgy, and this is the Zennurgy podcast. And you can find the past episodes on laughsandlyrics.com. That's LAUGHZAND lyrics.com. And thank you guys for joining us as we talked about determination. I hope you enjoyed it. And you will see the questions we didn't get to in the workbook that will be coming out in June. That'll have all the new episodes on it, because the first one just has all the A episodes, but the second one will have the rest of season 2 on it. So thank you guys for joining us, and may you walk in Zennurgy. Have a great night. My name is Zennurgy, and I have a weekly podcast called Zennurgy, which is fuel for the mind, body, and soul. And this is the Zennurgize Your Life Goal Setting Package, Volume 1. It comes with the workbook, a journal, stickers, a bookmark, tabs, and a QR code where you can find my podcast. And inside this workbook, you're going to have 16 different principles. The first one, I'm going to show you mine, is abundance. You have a place to put pictures that inspire you of role models, also pictures of goals that you want to create, goals, journal prompts, meditations, affirmations, all kinds of things to help you focus on this principle to better your life. And like I said, there's 16 principles. So this is a $15 package that comes with all of these things I've shown you, $21 with shipping and handling, and you can get it at laughsandlyrics.com. So Zennurgize your life with me. Thank you.